The sun shone brightly over Maplewood, a quaint town with tree-lined streets and bustling small businesses. Outside one of the town's most popular corner stores, 12-year-old Jamal Dixon stood by a small folding table. His table was neatly organized with an array of candy bars, all priced modestly, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Support my school fundraiser." Jamal's goal was simple: raise enough money to help his middle school's basketball team purchase new uniforms. As an aspiring player himself, he wanted to contribute and prove that with a little effort, anything was possible. He greeted every passerby with a wide smile. "Hi there. Would you like to buy some candy to support my school team?" His youthful enthusiasm caught the attention of many, and a steady trickle of townsfolk stopped to make purchases. But not everyone was pleased by his presence. Inside the corner store, owner Harold Peterson stood behind the counter, glaring out the window at Jamal. A middle-aged man with a short temper, Harold had run the store for years and prided himself on keeping his sidewalk clear of what he called disruptions. "Unbelievable," Harold muttered under his breath. "This is a place of business, not a flea market." He stormed outside, his tone sharp. "Hey, kid, what do you think you're doing here?" Jamal looked up, startled. "I'm selling candy for my school's fundraiser, sir." Harold scowled. "Not here, you're not. You're driving away my customers." Jamal glanced at the busy sidewalk. "I'm sorry, sir, but I'm not blocking the entrance. I've been polite to everyone." "I don't care how polite you are," Harold snapped. "You can't just set up shop wherever you want. Now pack up and move along." Jamal hesitated, his smile fading. "I'm just trying to help my team. I'm not hurting anyone." Harold's patience ran out. "I'm calling the police," he said, pulling out his phone. "Let them deal with this." Jamal's heart sank as Harold dialed. He stood silently, unsure of what to do. A few passers-by stopped, watching the exchange with growing discomfort. Minutes later, a police car pulled up, and an officer stepped out. He approached the scene cautiously, addressing Harold first. "Sir, what seems to be the issue?" the officer asked. "This kid is loitering," Harold said, jabbing a finger toward Jamal. "He's selling candy without permission and disrupting my business." The officer turned to Jamal, who looked up at him with wide, nervous eyes. "Is that true, son?" the officer asked gently. "I'm just selling candy for my school fundraiser," Jamal said softly. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." Before the officer could respond, another car pulled up, this one a sleek black sedan with a town emblem on the side. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Mayor Charles Dixon, Jamal's uncle. Mayor Charles Dixon's presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. A tall, confident man in his mid-40s, he carried himself with the authority of someone who had dedicated his life to serving the community. His tailored suit and polished demeanor stood in stark contrast to the tension unfolding outside the corner store. "Uncle Charles!" Jamal exclaimed, relief washing over him. The mayor offered a reassuring smile as he approached his nephew. "Jamal, are you okay?" he asked, placing a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. Jamal nodded but looked toward Harold. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was just selling candy, and he called the police." Charles's expression tightened as he turned his attention to Harold. "Mr. Peterson," he said, addressing the store owner with a calm but firm tone. "What seems to be the issue here?" Harold, taken aback by the mayor's sudden arrival, stammered, Well, this boy was loitering, and he's disrupting my business. I have the right to call the police." Charles raised an eyebrow. "Loitering? Disrupting your business? From what I can see, Jamal is quietly selling candy on public property for a school fundraiser. That doesn't seem like loitering to me." Harold crossed his arms defensively. "It's still bad for business. People come here to shop, not to be hassled by some kid hawking candy." Charles's gaze hardened, his calm exterior giving way to a controlled intensity. "Hassled? Mr. Peterson, Jamal isn't hassling anyone. In fact, several community members have approached me recently to praise his initiative and good manners." The officer, who had been observing silently, cleared his throat. "Mayor Dixon is correct," he said. "The boy isn't breaking any laws. Fundraising in public spaces is perfectly legal, as long as it doesn't obstruct foot traffic. Harold flushed, realizing he was losing ground. Well, maybe so, but it still doesn't look good for my store. Charles took a step closer, his voice dropping slightly. What doesn't look good for your store, Mr. Peterson, is calling the police on a child who's trying to do something positive for his community. This kind of behavior reflects poorly not just on you, but on the values of this town. A small crowd had begun to gather, their murmurs growing louder. One woman spoke up. Mayor Dixon, I bought candy from Jamal earlier. He was polite and respectful. I can't believe Mr. Peterson called the police on him. Another man chimed in. Yeah, this is ridiculous. The kid's just trying to help his school. Why punish him for that? Harold's confidence wavered as the crowd's support for Jamal became clear. He glanced around, realizing the tide had turned against him. Charles addressed the group, his tone steady and authoritative. This town is built on the principles of community, fairness, and opportunity. When we see a young man like Jamal embodying those values, we should support him, not tear him down. The crowd erupted into applause, and Harold shifted uncomfortably. Charles turned back to him, his expression unyielding. If you have any further concerns, Mr. Peterson, I suggest you take them up with my office. Harold Peterson stood frozen, his face flushed with embarrassment as the crowd's murmurs grew louder. The full weight of Mayor Dixon's words began to settle over him, and he suddenly felt very small. The community he had served for years was now openly siding with the young boy he had unjustly targeted. I didn't mean for this to get out of hand, Harold mumbled, looking at Charles and then at Jamal. I was just trying to protect my business. Charles's expression softened slightly, though his tone remained firm. Protecting your business doesn't mean you have the right to treat others unfairly, especially a child who's trying to do something positive. Jamal didn't harm anyone. In fact, he's embodying the spirit of hard work and community engagement that this town prides itself on. Harold nodded, his shoulders slumping. You're right, Mayor Dixon. I let my assumptions get the better of me. I shouldn't have called the police. I'm sorry. Charles glanced at Jamal, who looked up at his uncle, unsure of how to respond. Jamal, Charles said gently, would you like to say anything? Jamal hesitated, then took a deep breath. It's okay, Mr. Peterson. I just wanted to raise money for my team. I didn't mean to cause any trouble. Harold's face softened. I see that now. You've got a good head on your shoulders, kid. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. Jamal nodded. Thanks, Mr. Peterson. The crowd, sensing the tension easing, began to disperse. Some approached Jamal's table, buying candy and offering words of encouragement. You're doing great, young man, one man said, handing over a $10 bill for a single candy bar. Thanks, Jamal said, smiling for the first time since the confrontation began. Charles watched with quiet pride as the community rallied around his nephew. Turning back to Harold, he said, I hope this can serve as a learning experience. Assumptions and snap judgments can hurt people, and it's up to all of us to do better. Harold nodded, his voice subdued. I'll do better, Mayor. I promise. Good, Charles said, his tone softening further. Because this town is only as strong as the people who make it up, and that includes you. Let's make sure we all contribute to its strength. As the crowd thinned, Charles knelt beside Jamal's table. You okay, buddy? He asked, his voice warm. Yeah, I'm okay, Jamal said, his confidence returning. Thanks for coming, Uncle Charles. Charles smiled and ruffled Jamal's hair. Always. You're out here working hard and doing something good. That deserves support, not judgment. Jamal grinned. I guess I'll have a good story to tell the team. You sure will, Charles said with a laugh. Now let's see if I can get some of that candy before it's all gone. The events of that morning spread quickly through Maplewood. By lunchtime, nearly everyone in the small town had heard about what had happened outside Harold Peterson's corner store. Social media posts highlighted the story, many praising Mayor Dixon for stepping in and defending his nephew. Others commented on Jamal's determination and grace under pressure. Later that afternoon, Harold Peterson stood in his store, reflecting on the events of the day. The sight of Jamal's small table, his genuine smile, and the community rallying around him lingered in Harold's mind. For years, Harold had prided himself on being a respected member of the community, but today he had learned a humbling lesson about what that truly meant. Determined to make amends, Harold grabbed a clipboard and began writing out an idea. Within minutes, he walked outside to where Jamal was still selling candy. "Jamal," Harold said, clearing his throat, "can I have a word?" Jamal looked up, slightly wary. "Yes, sir?" Harold smiled awkwardly and held out the clipboard. "I've been thinking. I treated you unfairly, and I want to make it right. I spoke with the town council, and I'd like to host a fundraiser for your basketball team, right here at the store." Jamal's eyes widened in surprise. "You'd do that for us?" Harold nodded. "It's the least I can do after how I acted. I'll even donate part of today's sales to help get you closer to your goal." Jamal glanced at his uncle, who gave him an encouraging nod. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson. That would be amazing." Word of the fundraiser spread quickly. By the next weekend, the corner store was buzzing with activity. A large banner that read, "Support Maplewood Middle School Basketball," hung over the entrance. Jamal and his teammates stood outside, selling candy and taking photos with supportive neighbors. Harold stood near the entrance, greeting customers and encouraging them to contribute. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly part of the community rather than just a business owner. Charles Dixon watched the scene from the sidewalk, his heart swelling with pride. He approached Harold, extending a hand. "Thank you for this, Harold. It's good to see the town coming together." Harold shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for holding me accountable, Mayor. I needed the wake-up call." Charles smiled. "We all need one from time to time. What matters is what we do after." As the day wound down, Jamal approached his uncle with a wide grin. "Uncle Charles, we raised enough for the uniforms. Everyone was so generous." Charles beamed. "I knew you could do it, buddy. Hard work and a little help from the community can go a long way." Jamal glanced at Harold, who stood nearby. "And maybe a second chance, too." Charles chuckled. "You're wise beyond your years, kid." The fundraiser was a resounding success, not just in terms of money raised, but in the way it brought the Maplewood community closer together. By the end of the weekend, the basketball team had enough funds to purchase new uniforms and equipment, and Jamal had earned the respect and admiration of his neighbors. The following week, Mayor Charles Dixon held a town hall meeting to discuss community values and inclusivity. The room was packed, with Harold Peterson sitting near the front, his usual guarded demeanor replaced with humility. "Good evening, everyone," Charles began, his voice steady and warm. "What happened last week was a learning moment for all of us. It reminded us of the importance of kindness, understanding, and second chances. I'm proud of how our town came together to support Jamal and his team, but there's always more we can do." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Maplewood is a special place because of the people who live here. Let's continue to build a community where everyone feels valued and included, no exceptions." The audience broke into applause, and Charles glanced at Harold, who stood and addressed the room. "I just want to say something," Harold began, his voice filled with sincerity. "I made a mistake last week. I let my assumptions cloud my judgment, and I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. But thanks to this town, and to Mayor Dixon, I had the chance to make it right. I'll carry that lesson with me moving forward." The room erupted into applause again, and Harold sat down, his shoulders lighter than they'd been in years. Later that evening, Charles and Jamal sat on the front porch of Charles's home, watching the sunset. Jamal held a brand new basketball jersey in his hands, the bright green and gold letters spelling out Maplewood Tigers. "You did something incredible, Jamal," Charles said, his tone filled with pride. "Not just for your team, but for this whole town." Jamal smiled, running his fingers over the jersey. "It wasn't easy, but I'm glad everything turned out okay." Charles nodded. "It did. And you showed everyone what it means to stand tall, even when things get tough. That's a lesson that'll stick with them, and with you, for the rest of your life." Jamal grinned. Thanks, Uncle Charles. I couldn't have done it without you. Charles laughed and ruffled Jamal's hair. You could have, but I'm glad I was there to see it. In the weeks that followed, the Maplewood community continued to grow stronger. Harold Peterson became an advocate for local youth programs, hosting fundraisers at his store and mentoring young entrepreneurs like Jamal. The basketball team's new uniforms were a point of pride for the town, a reminder of what could be accomplished when people worked together. As for Jamal, he became a local hero, his story inspiring others to chase their dreams and stand up for what they believed in. He learned that even in the face of adversity, kindness and determination could change hearts, and a little candy could go a long way.